Hi, I'm Marianne Phillip, and I'm here to talk about whether Leonardo da Vinci was a homosexual pedophile. Because every art historian or historian who says he was a homosexual also accuses him of being a pedophile of the worst sort. Someone who would take an 11-year-old boy into his home as his student and then use him sexually. Now, neither that boy nor any of Da Vinci's other many young apprentices ever accused him of any sexual impropriety, nor is there anything in Da Vinci's thousands of pages of writing that admits to homosexual behavior, much less to being a pedophile, although he did admit to having sex with a woman in those notebooks. There are basically three reasons why the world accuses Da Vinci of being a homosexual pedophile, and I'm going to talk about the primary reason today. The other two are minor. First, let me briefly explain why you should listen to me. My undergraduate degree is from Stanford University, and it was in Renaissance Studies, which was a self-created major. I then practiced law for 30 years, came back to what I love best, and started writing fiction about it. However, I was very, very serious about the history. These books are candy-coated history. Leonardo is my principal detective in both my books. You'll see beside me, A Borgia Daughter Dies. I tell you in that book the entire saga of the Borgia family, for whom Leonardo worked for a brief period, and you kind of get a cocktail party biography of Leonardo. I researched his sexuality for the first book and was so appalled by what I came up with, not because of what he did, but because of what was done to him, that it becomes the background history for the second book, Da Vinci Detects. Now, Borgia Daughter Dies has sold thousands of copies and consistently averages 4 out of 5 stars. But Da Vinci Detects is new, and it's getting 5 stars, but it's not selling as well, so I put it on sale for 99 cents temporarily. And you can hear the story I'm about to tell you in a much more fun way, and see a lot of great Renaissance art, and meet all the great artists of the period who were all in Florence at the same time when the book was set. Or you can listen on here. I'll try not to be too boring. So the main reason Leonardo da Vinci is labeled a homosexual pedophile is that he was anonymously accused, but not convicted, of homosexuality, but not pedophilia, before the Office of the Knight. That's night as an opposite of day, which was this diabolical institution that I am about to describe to you, that's purpose was persecution and prosecution of gay males. They didn't pick on lesbians because they did not know they exist. Now, accusations were flying around like mosquitoes at the point that Leonardo was accused. There was this homophobic frenzy going on that I'm about to describe to you. And over half the males in Florence were accused at some point in their lifetime, 2/3 if they lived to be 40 years old. Those statistics come from a book called Forbidden Friendships, which you'll see in these pictures next to me, and they were derived by the historian who wrote them. By the way, this is Oxford University who published this book, and it's peer-reviewed, by taking the Night Office records and the records of a census from around Leonardo's times and computerizing them and analyzing them. There is a chart at the back of the book of convictions, and convictions rose and fell in tall sine waves. And Leonardo was arrested but not convicted at the top of the tallest sine wave. Not a good year to be a young male in Florence. He was arrested, as I will explain, based on no evidence whatsoever, none in the technical sense. That is not surprising. What is surprising is that he was not convicted because the Night Office was a conviction-making machine, as you will see. Now, I recommend Michael Rock's book for the statistics, but understand there's nothing in it. There it is. There is nothing in it about Leonardo, and what is missing that you are going to get in a minute is the perspective of a modern lawyer. I couldn't help but tick off the constitutional violations that the Night Office committed. I'm talking about the American Constitution, which is the only one I'm familiar with. We have lots of provisions that relate to fair criminal processes, and the Night Office violated all of them, sometimes multiple times. which explains why we have things like that in our American Constitution. We now take them for granted, but they were a reaction to the kind of institution that the night office was. So now I'm going to tell you about the night office and Leonardo's involvement with it, both at the same time, in 3 minutes or less. And when I get to those violations of American constitutional norms, which are pretty much all civilized nations' norms, I think, I'm just going to hold my nose. So here we go. So about 20 years before Leonardo da Vinci was born, the city of Florence, Italy, got tired of its reputation as being a homosexual haven, and it established the night office, night as in opposite of day, in order to wipe out homosexuality. They gave the night office broad powers of torture. And they invented several unique ways of catching homosexuals. By the way, I'm talking about men here. The night office did not know that lesbians exist. The first way they caught homosexuals is they had undercover officers who got to keep a quarter of the fine if they caught someone, which meant that their livelihoods were dependent on convictions. By the way, the judges' livelihoods were also dependent on convictions. Now, the second way they caught people was they had these black boxes in churches all over Florence, and the clergy and the city encouraged citizens to turn in homosexuals. They could accuse them anonymously, but if they gave their name, it was always protected, even though their accusations were used as evidence, and they got to get a quarter of the fine in the event their accusation led to a conviction. Now, one day in 1476, there was an anonymous accusation in one of those black boxes, and it basically said this: there is a 17-year-old. The only facts were how to find the 17-year-old. And he's had sex with the following 4 men, A, B, C, D for Da Vinci. Yours truly, anonymous. No other facts, no explanation of how Anonymous could possibly have known of the intimate lives of 4 men and a juvenile. Now, you couldn't arrest somebody now based on that kind of thing. Not in America, anyway. Nonetheless, they were all arrested. Now, if they followed their usual procedure, they would first have arrested the juvenile. They did this with boys as young as 6 years old. They would arrest the juveniles and take them in and question them in front of the instruments of torture, and sometimes they tortured them. Michael Rock's book says it didn't happen often, but that's because they didn't write it down very often, and if you believe they wrote it down every time they did it, then you are less cynical than I am. Regardless, we know something that they always did with the juveniles. They always promised them that they would let them go and nothing bad would happen to them if they just confessed and named names. And this was true because the juveniles couldn't be prosecuted. 86% of the juveniles who were made that promise in front of the instruments of torture confessed and named names, sometimes many names, until late in the century when the city built in some relatively minor consequences for the juveniles, some of whom may have been male prostitutes, whereupon the confession rate by juveniles immediately dropped by 50%. Now, they also worked hard to get the adults to confess, although the juveniles' confession was sufficient to convict the adults, but it's much neater if you get everybody to confess. And they had a whole lot of very interesting ways to get the adults to confess, which I'm not going to tell you about now because it's all in my book. And I'm hoping some of you will buy it. It's only 99 cents. Of course, they did use torture occasionally with the adults. There is no evidence that Da Vinci was tortured. Some of the coercion they used had to do with reputation. Presumably, they exercised all that coercion on Da Vinci and the other 3 men. Remarkably, though, none of them confessed, and neither did the juvenile. That is why Da Vinci was not convicted. There was never any evidence against him. He was nonetheless bitter for the rest of his life about his imprisonment, which lasted for days and perhaps weeks. He rightly judged that it would affect his reputation forever, and it did affect his reputation forever. A brief word about the punishments. The fines I'm talking about were very heavy fines. We're not talking parking tickets here. They were sufficient that they drove the entire organization and paid everybody's salaries. They even supported a group of nuns with these fines. But they also had other punishments because some people couldn't afford the fines. So poor people got terrible shaming punishments, or they got banished, or they got beaten, or they got lashed, or sometimes they were burned at the stake. Florence retained its reputation as being soft on homosexuals, but they were convicting homosexuals at hundreds of times the rates of other Italian cities, so maybe they weren't so soft. Alright, that anonymous accusation against Da Vinci when he was young is the only piece of paper from Da Vinci's lifetime, reliably from Da Vinci's lifetime, that purports to accuse him either of homosexuality or pedophilia. I do understand that those are separate things, although people in the Renaissance did not seem to. I should note a drawing, which I cannot show you because I would be made to take this film down. But you can Google it. It is titled Angelo Incarnato. It purports to be by Da Vinci, and those who say it is say it came from a collection that was stolen 150 years ago without having been catalogued. In other words, it lacks what lawyers call chain of custody and what art historians call provenance. There is no proof that it really did come from Da Vinci. It shows a male face similar to Da Vinci's painting of St. John, with female breasts and an erect male circumcised penis. The speculation is that the face is the face of Salai, the 11-year-old, who was supposedly his boy toy. I believe that it is a 20th century fraud, largely because of the lack of provenance and the fact that that penis is circumcised, because Christian men were not circumcised in Da Vinci's time, and there is no way he was drawing circumcised penises, erect or otherwise. I did say that there are two other reasons why Da Vinci is referred to as a homosexual pedophile, and I will give them to you now, and if there's interest, I can do podcasts on them at greater length. But the two other reasons briefly are, number one, bad biographers, the first of whom was undoubtedly a pedophile himself and had obvious ulterior motives for accusing Da Vinci, whom he never knew because he was born 20 years after Da Vinci died, a very old man in France. Later art historians and biographers, unfortunately, took him at face value. And some of them were inclined to treat accusation as proof and speculation as fact. They were not good historians, in other words. They may have been good artists, but they were not good historians. The other broader issue is, who were the boys who were closest to him? There were two of them, actually. One of them was that 11-year-old who stayed with him until close to the time of his death and survived him. Neither those boys, nor their families, I want to emphasize, ever accused Da Vinci of any impropriety. But what art historians debate is, were they his boy toys, or were they his adopted sons? I think there is pretty good circumstantial evidence that they were his adopted sons, and that is a position I took in my book. I am very comfortable with it. I hope you will read my books. I hope you will enjoy them. And if you want me to do further podcasts on these issues, send me a message at my website, mariannephillip.com, and I'll follow up. Thank you very much.